everyone, and welcome to our next segment of Cooking with CHW. In previous videos, we featured Dr. Tim Fargo, and Dr. Kaylee Fargo. I'm Nancy Fargo, and am married to Dr. Tim Fargo, and am Dr. Kaylee Fargo's mama. Today, I'm going to share with you a recipe that is a family favorite and very easy to make. I'm calling it the Devilishly Good Flourless Chocolate Cake with Chili. It's actually created by Linda Balslev. It will be posted down below or somewhere in the midst of this video, so you can have it for your reference as well. To start with, I'm going to go over my preparation for putting this cake together and kind of give you a few little hacks that I've come up with to make things easier for the preparation of the cake. The ingredients are very simple. The first one is the 12 ounces of dark chocolate. We want 70 to 72, 73% dark chocolate-ness. I like to get the chocolate from Trader Joe's. There's these big pound plus bars. They're very reasonably priced and they work really well with this cake. We need 12 ounces of chocolate. However, these bars are 17 ounces, so we have to measure out the 12 ounces. One thing that I like to use to help me with that is one of these little kitchen scales. This is one of my most treasured kitchen utensils. Any recipe that calls for a weight, this makes it very easy to do that. So I have measured out my chocolate. I've measured to 12 ounces. With this pound plus bar, it happens to be about 27 pieces, but you should measure it yourself just to make sure, but it'll be somewhere in that range of that amount of chocolate with this particular bar. The next item is a half a cup of unsalted butter cubed. I have that in the refrigerator waiting. Third of a cup of oil. It calls for grapeseed or canola oil. I actually like to use olive oil in my cooking. I get this extra light tasting olive oil. It says ideal for sauteing, baking, and frying. I've never had an issue with it, but you can use whatever light tasting oil that you like. So there's a third of a cup of that. And then we have, in here I have my 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla, as well as my 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. And then I have my 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of the chipotle chili powder, and salt. It calls for kosher salt. I particularly like to use this Himalayan pink salt. You can use whatever salt that you like to use. One note, this cake is especially tasty because of the chipotle chili powder that is added. I have found that the Spice Islands ground chipotle chili works super well. I've gotten it at the local grocery store, so something along those lines, but that makes this cake very special. Another important thing is 6 large eggs at room temperature. Why at room temperature? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, when eggs are at room temperature, they mix together more readily and without lumps and such. The other thing that is even more important with this recipe is that when the eggs are at room temperature and you use a mixer, you get a greater volume of the eggs when they are whipped up with your mixer. And especially for this cake, we like to have that airy voluminous because it gets the final texture that we're looking for. So 6 eggs at room temperature. You take them out probably a half hour before you want to start the cake, no more than 2 hours ahead of time. If you're in a hurry, you can take your eggs and put them in a bowl of warm water, not hot water, but warm water, and for about 10 to 15 minutes, and that should get you your product as well. And then we have a cup of granulated sugar, and then it calls for confectioner's sugar for garnish. I'll show you my little hack for that at the end. But now I have all of my ingredients here, and I'm going to get ready to get started. So one of the first things that we need to do is get the pan ready that we're going to bake it in. It is extremely important that you have a springform pan for this recipe. I didn't have one the first time I made it. It was a disaster. So I recommend that you get a springform pan. You can get it at your local Target or Amazon or whatever. What makes it a springform pan is that it has this spring here, which when you open it after you've baked the cake, you can take the sides off, the side off of it, and your cake will not stick to it, and it makes it so much easier. To prepare your springform pan, you're going to take your oil. I just have some pan here, and you're going to spray generously the sides and the bottom. Then you're also going to take parchment paper that fits the bottom of the pan and put that down over the oiled bottom, and then you're going to spray that as well. You just really don't want this sticking at all. So that's how you prepare the pan. Another little, you probably saw I have this whole pile of parchment. I make this cake so often that I have pre-cut parchment to fit the bottom of my pan so that I have it at the ready whenever I want to make one of these cakes. And then what I've used for that template is the advertising that came in the bottom of the pan. I just use this and trace it around on the parchment paper, and then I can cut the circles that fit perfectly inside my pan. Okay, so I've got my pan ready, and then I am going to start with the chocolate. All right, I have my pan ready, and so I'm going to do the first step, which is preparing the chocolate mixture. Here are my 12 ounces of chocolate. Started with 17. This recipe calls for the chocolate and the butter to be melted in a double boiler. If you don't have that, I use this little hack where I will melt it in the microwave. You've got to be careful when you do that. You have to do it very gradually, but I've done it successfully numerous times. So I take the chocolate, which is chunked up, the butter, which is chunked up. That's important to do to get it around the same size pieces. And I'm going to put it in the microwave for a minute, and then I'm going to stir it. And then I'll probably put it in for about another half a minute and stir it and see if it's at the consistency that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, I have successfully melted the chocolate and butter. I started putting it in the microwave for a minute, took it out, stirred it up a little bit, another 30 seconds, took it out, stirred it up again, another 15 seconds, took it out, stirred it up again, and I like to stir it with a whisk because that helps combine the ingredients. And the chocolate was still a little lumpy when I took it out after that 15 seconds. So I just kept stirring it, and the chocolate was melting as I was stirring. Once I made sure that it was a consistency without any lumps, then I knew I had the product that I was looking for. So your microwave might be a little bit different in the timing, but you just want to do it in very small segments of time so you don't overheat it, and stir it in between, especially with this little whisk, and you should have success with that. So then to the chocolate, you add your 1/3 of a cup of oil, which I have ready here, and then your vanilla and your almond flavoring, your almond extract. I like the pure vanilla and the pure almond extract. I have my chipotle chili powder here, pre-measured, and the cinnamon, and my salt. I don't like things too salty, so I'm not going to put as much in as maybe a little bit more. Remember that the recipe calls for unsalted butter. So if for some reason you don't have unsalted butter and you end up using salted butter, then probably don't add extra salt to the recipe. You don't want it to be too salty. So we're just gonna stir all of this together with the whisk. Again, this helps incorporate the oil and the spice. And you can already start smelling how devilishly good this is going to be. So this is the consistency of the chocolate. It looks wonderful. Okay. While the chocolate was in the microwave, I also took the opportunity to put the eggs, to crack the eggs open, put them in my pan or my bowl. I'm going to start using my mixer with it and build up the volume of the eggs. The recipe indicates that you can put the sugar in right now. I like to start the eggs on their own, maybe for a minute or so, and then I'll add the sugar and I'll continue whipping it with my blender or mixer for another 3 to 4 minutes. You want it very light color, light yellow, and you want it to have a bigger volume than you start with. Okay, so I have just spent probably a good 4 minutes at the highest speed on my mixer, beating the eggs and the sugar. Probably the volume is 3 to 4 times what it started out with, which is what you want. You want to get as much air in there as possible, almost souffle-like. And unlike a recipe with flour in it where you don't want to over mix it, this you can mix as long as you want, because the more air in there, the better, okay? So then we're gonna take our chocolate mixture. I'm gonna just make sure it's really well combined again, still. And we're going to pour it in here, and using a spatula, we're going to fold in the chocolate. We're not gonna use the mixer because it's actually with the chocolate in there, it ends up taking out volume. So we want to kind of be very gentle with this, but I've also learned that you have to work it pretty well, because when you start, you see just a little bit of chocolate on the top. Because the chocolate's heavier, it settles to the bottom, and it takes quite a while to mix it in fully. You see it's starting to come up. So I take the spatula and I pull from the bottom, and I want to make sure that I'm getting it very well combined, but I'm being gentle with it so that I still keep the air in there and the volume. So now I'm starting to see some of the more the darker chocolate come up from the bottom. So when you're finished, this should be completely dark brown. All right, so this is what it should look like color-wise. It's all right if there's still a little bit of variation in the color of the brown, but the chocolate should be completely integrated with the eggs. All right, it looks fabulous. So now I'm going to take my pan that I have prepared at the outset, and you're just going to pour it in. Get everything out because it's all very yummy. And it smells wonderful. Wait till you bake it, because then it smells even better. Like I said, this is a family favorite of ours, and it's a great way to entice my children to come over for dinner. Okay, so here we go. We have it in our pan. It's probably an inch and a half below the top. When this cooks, it's gonna raise again, but then when we take it out of the oven and let it cool, then it settles. So it settles into this nice, rich, thick confection, which is very delicious. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the oven. Oh, while you were preparing all of this, you should have been preheating your oven to 350. I have this little convection oven here that has its own timer in it, so I'm gonna put it in there for 35 minutes. My oven spins the cake so it keeps it cooking evenly. If you're going to be using it in a different type of oven, I would say use it on convection if you have that, but maybe turn the cake once during the process of cooking with whatever oven you have. So we're going to go ahead and cook it, and hopefully smell-o-vision will turn on with this, and when it comes out of the oven you can smell how devilishly good it is. Okay, my timer's going off. It smells fabulous. I'm going to take the cake out of the oven. You see how the top, it's cracked a little bit. It is high. It's almost up to the top of the pan. So now we are going to let it cool for, I think it's at a half hour. I'm going to let it cool, and as it cools, it's gonna settle, and that's what we want it to do. So now we're just gonna let it cool. I'm gonna just double check. I usually let it cool for like half hour before I take off the edge of the pan. Okay, an hour has elapsed, and I'm going to remove the spring form from the cake. You just unlatch it. It's very satisfying. And gently lift up, and there you have your cake. See, it has settled a little bit. That is the way it's supposed to look. Underneath this cake is still the base of the spring form. So I usually leave it on there and let it cool a little bit longer. I also have this little carrier, storer, cake storer. Actually, it's a pie storer that I use to store my cakes in. Like I said, I bake so many of them that I bought a special unit for it. I'm gonna put this like this in the refrigerator. But before I put it in the refrigerator, I am going to add a little bit of powdered sugar to it. And another little hack that I have is in order to spread the sugar on the cake without it clumping, I used one of these little, I think it's for tea, loose tea. I've filled it with powdered sugar, and then you can just tap it and it comes out very nicely. You can put as much or as little as you want on it, but it's a lovely garnish. It makes it look pretty. And then you can add a little bit more if you want before you serve the cake, but I'm gonna put it in the refrigerator now until my family comes over. Truth be told, I have served it like this. It's a little warm. You have to be a little careful when you cut it. It is better when you refrigerate it a little bit, but it will work like that if you didn't allow enough time for your cake to cool. So I'm going to cover my cake so that it's ready to put in the refrigerator. I'll put it in there for, the recipe says like 3 hours, but I have served it like this. At this stage, it's a little warm, but so you just have to be careful when you cut it. It might be a little sticky. But it is certainly edible and lovable and delicious. But it also stores really well in the refrigerator and is very enjoyable to eat. Postscript, my family didn't end up coming over for cake last night, so I will be bringing it into the clinic today for the staff to enjoy. As you can see, I've added some raspberries, fresh raspberries as a little garnish. I do love to serve this cake with a little whipped cream, some fresh fruit like raspberries. Sometimes it's fun to drizzle a little dark chocolate on it. You can spruce it up any way that you'd like, or it's really good just with a fork and eating it on its own without any accoutrement. So I'm going to cover the cake with my little carrier here, convenient carrier, and bring it into the clinic for the staff to taste and give their assessment. Hope they enjoy it. Please check with them next time you come into the clinic, see what they thought. Okay, everyone, enjoy and happy fall.